Hey, welcome back to the Revolution of Being podcast. Today, we're going to dive into topics that are deeply personal for Jessica and I, which is the journey of entrepreneurship, but also mindset. And so, if a lot of our audience are entrepreneurs or on the path, or maybe have a side hustle, and if you've gone this path, it's really about mindset, leadership style, the ability to navigate the roadblocks that inevitably come up on your journey. And so we wanted to dive a little deeper today into how the integration of both like conscious business coaching, but also the use of hypnotherapy can really help to create sustainable business growth, because we want to address the external strategy, but we also need to look at the inside map. And so why this is important. The majority of entrepreneurs at some point in their career will struggle with financial ceilings. So the money mindset blocks. Entrepreneurs will also deal with imposter syndrome. Many of us, myself included, have dealt with burnout and inability to scale, which really comes back to mindset as the foundation, but then also needing that tactical and practical ability, which is really where you come in handy. Is like, I can help people with mindset all day long, but if you don't have a business plan or something that you can actually follow through on scaling in, it becomes really difficult to be able to actually take the aligned action. But if your mindset's not there, you're going to hit such resistance within your business growth because your subconscious mind is not aligned with the vision of what you want to create. And so, you and I have shared some mutual clients, and it's been really fun to see the just profound growth they have when they've got that foundation. You've got a really cool tool that we'll talk about in a moment that helps people understand their neurological wiring. And then I can go in there and help them with the subconscious beliefs that are a part of that, so that gets refined. And then it's kind of like this, we hand the baton back and forth to each other, where when you take back over, or are working in conjunction, they've got plans, and the people have the ability to have those roadblocks really removed. And so you and I are big proponents and big believers in the power of deep inner work. And so I'd love to dive in a little bit more, Jess, as far as, when you first work with clients. Let's talk a little bit about the AcuMax and how you help them understand kind of what their styles are, what their predispositions are, because that's so important. And you did the AcuMax on me, 2 or 3 years ago. And it was really interesting because it literally was like, yep, all of that is exactly how I show up. And, I think you'll go into how that's good to know, and also the light and dark of those skills that we all have, or innate abilities. So why don't you dive on in and tell us a little bit more about kind of how you work with your clients?
Yeah, so AcuMax is a neurological wiring measuring tool. By definition, it's considered a personality assessment. However, it does not behave like any other personality assessments on the market. So I've used this for almost 10 years. It's been very close to that. I was trained on it, and I found it was so effective in helping people not only see who they were, but better understand other people because they understood themselves. So
Mhm.
once you kind of understand that there's a kind of a black and white objective piece to this, it makes it easier to spot things in other people, gives you a greater understanding, and connections become, or have the opportunity to become, a little deeper. So it's a really great tool for building self-awareness. Now, when it comes to AcuMax, typically I'm using it for business owners. I'm usually going into a business, we're administering it to leaders, owners, and staff. And the purpose in that is multifaceted. On one hand, we're helping leaders to develop who they are. On the other hand, we're trying to understand who the staff are so we can understand situations, maybe how they're playing out, things like that. It's very objective. We're looking at 5 main neurological wiring paths. So that's just your brain's wiring. It's developed at birth, and it starts to become obvious right around the age of 1 to 2 years old, which correlates roughly with your terrible twos. So if anybody has had a toddler in their life and they're like, "Oh, you're a person now," that's those neurological pathways kind of getting fused. It matures around 15 or 16, and it really does remain static for your whole life. So it's very objective in that way. So when we come in and we do this, we get to see the landscape of what we're dealing with. But unlike doing mindset work, this is a very objective thing. So we're not really able to dig into the traumas that people may have experienced, the other aspects that make them who they are. But what it can do is show us their autonomy, which is their idea flow, their communication, their patience, their certainty or their need for certainty. And it tells me like decision making and approachability. Those 5 things paint me a picture, and I'm able to see objectively what's going on. Now, you said in there's like this light and dark. I call it a strength and a struggle. So some people get anxious. They're like, I don't want to fail it. I don't want to not pass the test. It is not a pass fail type situation. Every single attribute you have is going to either be a strength or have the complete possibility of being your greatest struggle. Everything lives in the same thread. So an example would be me. I have a high communication drive. It's very high. So that means I have strength in written and verbal communications. I lead with empathy. It tells me how I lead. I'm great at listening. I'm empathetic. I put myself in other people's shoes. The downside can be I over communicate. I can talk too much and drive people insane. I take things too personally, right? So the idea is that if you get to know that drive or your drives, you get to be better in control of who's driving the car. Is it your strength or is it your struggle? You have this new awareness. And that's why I love the tool, but I love pairing with you even more, because when I can get a client that gets to see this and they go, I see, okay, I see where I do that. And then you get to do mindset work. You get to help them unravel so that they're putting their strength in the driver's seat more often than their struggle.
Yeah, and you're spot on. We talked about how really up until like the age of 1 or 2, we have kind of these innate dispositions or predispositions. And I do think, there's a large part of it's so interesting. You and I talk about our kids. My 2 kids could not be further from similarity. It's insane how different they are. And it kind of pushes against the nature nurture argument of they came into this planet with their own kind of temperament and disposition. Now, the nurture component is what can really create those trauma those trauma pathways or the really empowered pathways. And so it's kind of like, I would almost say it to like having clay, that it's moldable clay. We all have a plop of clay that we come into this planet with, and then how it gets molded is the refinement of our personality, I would say. And so I remember years ago, I am a highly analytical person, very analytical. Now that's a razor's edge for me because I can trip into overanalysis and spin my tires, or I can eagle eye view an opportunity and situation and be able to know very clearly what actions to take. Now that's the light for me. The hard challenge is that overanalysis I trip into. But I'm super grateful. And I remember a coach saying years ago that that was my Achilles heel. And I'm like, hell no, it's not. It's a strength for me. I just have to learn how to harness it well. And empathy too. A lot of business owners are very empathetic people. And that can also put us in positions to struggle with boundaries, because of these subconscious beliefs that, we're a certain kind of way if we assert a boundary. And so when it comes to the subconscious work, really, it affects how we make decisions in our business. It affects how we communicate with people in our business. It affects what we think is possible in our business. So when people have that foundational understanding, and I think people that are very self-aware, like myself and yourself, we're not surprised when we get those results. We're like, yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Like you're highlighting what I kind of already knew and you're putting names to things that make sense in my daily life. But then we can dive deeper. And that's where the hypnotherapy comes in is, what were those moments in your life that really made you a chronic people pleaser, right? Like you're empathetic, you're very empathetic, but what created the people pleasing tendencies? What happened when you were little? And it doesn't mean that it was a negative situation. It's all perception. And so it's how, as little people, when we're young, we perceive events to happen. We perceive we're accepted, we're not accepted, etc. And so because the majority of my clients are analytical like myself, we like to know, like, I want to understand why I have the tendencies I do, because then when I understand that, and then those tendencies come back up, I'm like, oh, nope, I'm not that 4-year-old girl. Like, and I don't have to do that. I don't have to respond in that way. And knowing that, I also can change it, right? I can, through hypnotherapy, through coaching, begin to rewire those pathways. So my defaults aren't, kind of that, the more challenging aspects that I struggle through. And that's for all of us, right? So it's a process of, when I rebranded my business, my kind of tagline became reveal, heal, and transform, because it's like we want to reveal first what is beneath the surface because it helps us understand our tendencies. And I think it also lends much greater compassion to the fact that it's not a character flaw. It's not a negative thing. It's a trait we adopted to survive. And we can hold more compassion for ourselves when we begin to understand those tendencies served a purpose. They were protective at some point. They did something good for a while, and maybe in our adult years are not as useful. And so how do we begin to change that, right? So again, hypnosis, we do a lot of the what I call future pacing. So who is that 2.0 version of yourself who is strong in business, feels confident to, pitch new ideas to scale or whatever it is. And, without that subconscious buy-in, you're going to be butting up against a wall every single time. You'll get only so far on sheer willpower before you come back to your kind of homeostasis. And so we all have kind of a set point within us of our comfort zone. And that's also for a purpose of keeping us safe, right? We know what we've survived and we're comfortable here because it's survivable. But when we begin to move out of that, even if it's, 2xing our business, that can feel to our body like we're being chased by a tiger. And that's where people are like, well, I don't know why this is so hard. It's not a you thing. It's your subconscious mind really holding you back. And so that's the power. I have this amazing business owner I'm working with right now. It's two individuals from the business, and they, were just so excited with the revelations they're having and seeing the difference of hypnotherapy that they were like, every single person needs to know about this for business. And I'm like, absolutely, I agree. Because that's, I wouldn't have gotten where I am had I not done the mindset work. And, there's many different ways to do mindset work, of course, but I am a huge believer in hypnotherapy because it directly works with the subconscious mind, where, a lot of the other ones out there, whether it's just straight up mindset coaching, it's not subconscious based. You have to be in that, I shouldn't say have to, but it's most beneficial to be in that kind of trance state where you're accessing the subconscious mind directly to have the most rapid amount of change. And so, you and I have talked a little bit too about, we've got all these tools, right? We've got the AcuMax, we've got the hypnotherapy, we've got coaching and business coaching, but they're only as effective as the mindset that exists with which to support them. And so it can be like pulling teeth to get someone to do something. And I know you and I've talked about that we can see the end result with our clients and where they want to be. But if they don't have the ability to do the follow through, they're not, it's going to be a failure and they're going to tire spin. And so, you also had mentioned, I'd love you to talk a little bit more about even, the success, of the business is also dependent on the weakest link in your business. And that's something that you are excellent at spotting, especially with AcuMax. You can see very tangibly, very objectively where people's weaknesses are and how those systems can come together and complement each other or be a flaming mess. So if you're willing to, I'd love to hear more about that side of this too, because success is not just my mindset, your mindset, the leader's mindset. It's also the people that you work with that are on your team.
So this is the hardest part about being who I am. I come into a business that's struggling in some way. They either are dealing with hiring issues, turnover issues, just culture issues. It could be any of those things. And we take the assessment, I get to know people, and usually I can see the red flags immediately. And a lot of times I can see maybe people that are not going to be a good fit for where a business owner wants to go. I can see it on paper. I can pick up that vibe. But it's not my job at that point to be the angel of death. So I don't come in and wipe out teams and rebuild them. There is an evolution to it, and this is part of why the mindset is so important. So when I'm dealing with I'll use an example, a client that I've had for a number of years. When I came in, the situation was rough. It was rough. And the goal really was try to help my team. And so we didn't take on any contracts. We weren't going to do anything major. It was just going to be a once and done. And I can do that. I don't do it a lot, but I do it. So we just kind of evaluated the landscape, and it was rough. I mean, it was rough. And as this business owner and I spoke, it became clear to her that she needed something greater. Okay, things are out of control. I need something greater than this. And so we settled into a contract. We've been in a contract for a couple of years, and we made our first mission like, we just need to find the right person to work with you. We have to like stop the bleeding somewhere. And so that's what we did. Now, that changed the entire dynamic of where she ended up going. But the other half of it is that this client just happens to be incredibly self-aware. And once she felt that momentum, she was able to apply all these other practices into it, right? And it doesn't mean we don't have struggles. It doesn't mean everything's perfect. She never levels out. She's constantly leveling up. But I have had many experiences with clients who they want to just take the tool and they want that tool to be their magic wand. And then they're frustrated why the tool isn't doing everything they believed it could do for them. And the truth is it's only going to be as strong as you are. The tool could be a weapon. It could work against you. You have to develop yourself in order to make the tool as effective as you want it to be. And I find myself sitting in that position too often. Like having you in my back pocket is such a blessing, because when I'm working with a business owner and I'm like, listen, we are doing all the right A, B, C, D, E, F steps over here, right? This is the formula, but you are getting in your own way over here because you're afraid to let go, or you're afraid you're going to offend somebody, or you keep stepping in and doing all the work for team members that should be doing the work. But they're not doing it because they want to intentionally sabotage their business. They're doing it because subconsciously they're holding on to something from somewhere. And that's why the gift that you bring to people that are in a position to go, I really truly want to be able to know that the money I'm spending on these tools, because my tools will make a huge difference, that they're really going to give me an ROI. Those are the people that are then going to look over in this area and say, okay, how can I best align myself to make the best financial decision over here? And that's what this is. This is all about investing in yourself as a leader, because you don't get here by playing here.
Correct. And that's the thing, you and I have spent tens of thousands of dollars. I mean, beyond that, close to six figures or more, I imagine, over the last 5+ years on our own personal development. And that was with intention, right? And not all investments had been amazing, but I learned something from every single one that helped me grow as an individual. And that is really the difference that, I love working with people that are business owners, because they do understand this is a part of the game, of success is having the right people on your team to help you succeed. And sometimes that would be just a hypnotherapist, right? But sometimes you need really targeted business support. And so, I was telling a client last week that like I do work consistently with coaches, not every single month of every single year, but I will rotate what I need, because at different parts of my journey, I am needing very different tools and resources. As I'm leveling up, I need someone else to help me with my own mindset. I know the tools, but it's hard to employ them on yourself. And so it's like I have those very targeted things, and I've become intuitive with understanding what I need when. But to think that you're going to have a business and not invest is crazy. And how much money are you leaving on the table by not doing that deep inner work that all of us need to be doing consistently? Because it is the stumbling blocks that make us not succeed in the ways we want to. And I think a part of, what you and I have talked about as well is the beauty of your skills, your tools, and what I also provide is also clarity for clients, right? Because you're going to get to know yourself on a very deep level. And that's something that I still am working through, is like, who am I outside of the noise, outside of social media, outside of the pressure of what I think I should do? And that's what people are going through all the time. And they don't necessarily recognize the path they're following isn't maybe their highest purpose, but it's what they've done because their family expects it, or it's what's made money or whatever. And so, we're not talking about burning a business down, but we're saying what is in highest alignment, because that'll also prevent burnout. And that's what I've learned through and through and through with my own journey, but also with many, many people who've experienced burnout. Burnout is a sign that you're not in highest alignment with your purpose. It's not that you're doing too much. It's not that you're not getting enough sleep. It's not that you're eating crap food. Those don't help. But the true reason for burnout is you're not in highest alignment. And you can work 16 to 18 hours a day when you are aligned, and it'll feel like a blink of an eye. But when it's not aligned, it's going to feel like pulling teeth. And so that's also where, you get to get real honest with these tools and your strengths, and understanding your strengths, saying like, I'm doing a job that's not in, that's, with the AcuMax, right? I'm doing a job that requires high communication skills. That's not my strength. You're going to burn out, right? So who can you hire? Who can you bring on that can take on that role, or how can you delegate in some capacity? And as you said, if delegation is difficult, why? What's the subconscious belief as to why? And that's something that a lot of people deal with, is I got to do it all myself. I have to do it all myself because I want it to get done right.
And can I touch on that for just a minute? So
Mhm.
you kind of had said in your business model, I can't remember exactly what you said, but it was reveal. What was the three?
Reveal, heal, and transform.
Okay, I have three too. I don't think we talk about this very often. So the first step is to build self-awareness. That's where everything starts, right? And so we become more self-aware, we reveal. The next one is we become um, more, self-realized. So not only do we know who we are, but we're learning how to apply who we are to our day to day. That's what you're saying, right? We learn how to delegate. If that's not our strength, then maybe we have to learn how, or we have to hire somebody that can do that for us, whatever it is. But there's this third step, and this is like the heal piece. Um, and in the aftermath, it's this empowered step.
Mhm.
So it's becoming self-aware, self-realized, and then empowered, self-empowered. And so
Mhm.
to what you're saying is, when I see leaders go through this step, they get to that final step, and this is what it looks like. You know what? I am not a strong communicator. I get really drained by having to have dialogue all the time. However, I've learned ways to go about doing that yield me a result that feels really, really good. And so now I'm not living in this survival mode. I'm living in a state of empowerment. I'm making a choice. It's not being done to me. I'm doing it consciously. That is my end goal. And that's your end goal. I love how those two things align, so that we're taking people from this drained survival mode state into a place where they're empowered, their cups are getting filled, and they are in their highest alignment. And guess what? It's not even in their natural wiring. I can see it on paper. I look at that part too, where I'm like, look at you. You're energized and you're totally different. You're not a different person. You've learned how to use your tools in a different way. It's awesome. It's awesome stuff. And this is how we get there.
Yeah. And again, it's, we wanted to have this discussion today because it is so important, people, and this can be this can pertain to someone who's in a corporate career, right? If you're a corporate leader, same thing. Or if you're in a position, many of you know, I'm a former hospice nurse, and a lot of these same principles can apply to any position that you work within, because it's about self-awareness. And that was something that, I really found toxic in the corporate culture when I was there, with so many people complaining and unwilling to do anything to change the circumstances, right? I know when I'm just a little worker bee in an institution, my influence is small. I don't have a lot of sway when I'm just a nurse. However, we can choose how we show up every single day. We can choose to do work that's fulfilling and look at what our natural tendencies and strengths are. And I love hospice. You and I talk about this all the time. Like that is to the core, a large piece of who I am and my identity is a hospice nurse. Like that will forever be a big part of my life. And because that's so important to me and was such a flow state for work, it made very difficult times bearable because my why was so big and strong. And you also have to understand your why when you're doing anything. And when your values start to no longer be congruent with what's happening around you, that's a time to reevaluate. If you see things happening in your institution that are so far misaligned, that may not be the place any longer for you. And that's also a part of getting clear on who you are and recognizing I am such a firm believer in the abundance of this amazing universe we live in. There are opportunities everywhere. And I know right now is an interesting time where economically people are struggling. Inflation, the last few years has been out of control and people are really feeling it. However, and there are opportunities everywhere. And a part of recognizing that is getting out of the limiting mindset. And that was what we were all trained on, right? Like I grew up with the constant reminder that money doesn't grow on trees, that I'm lucky to have the opportunity to go to college and get a job because otherwise it's going to be a really difficult life for me. And all these beliefs that made it seem like scarcity was the rule. When in reality, abundance is the rule, scarcity is the exception, but it's unwiring all the beliefs that we have that make us feel small and disempowered. And that we're not victims. You and I talk about this a lot. Personal accountability, recognizing the power you have in every single circumstance is profound. And when you do, it's humbling, right? Because you recognize all the places that you played small, you played the victim, you didn't think you had choices. But it's really amazing when you get to that point of like, all right, what can I do now? I can't change the leadership of this company. I can't change maybe some of the dynamics of my colleagues, but here's what I can do, and that's where you get to choose how you want to show up, choose how you want to be every day and take a chance on yourself,
Yeah.
and it's just incredible once you start to feel empowered and surrounding yourself with people that are of like mind. Because if you're around people that really believe in scarcity or really just think life is hard, God, that's going to weigh you down. You have to, there is a saying, you vibe with your tribe. You're going to be around people and attract people that are resonating on a lower frequency if that's what you've existed in. And, me leaving the corporate world opened my eyes to just the amount of amazing people that exist that are go-getters that inspire me. And those are the rooms I choose to be in now. I don't want to be around people who are victims or, I hold compassion for that because I was that person for a long time, but I don't want to be there long. And I only have so much capacity. So I empower my clients, as do you, like what control do we have today? What can we do? How can we make this different? How can we show up different? And
Yeah,
that's a badass way to do it.
it
So,
is. I love the book Let Them by Mel Robbins. And she kind of talks about that. Number one, there's evidence around us everywhere that contradicts our limiting beliefs. We
mhm,
just don't see it. We're tuned into whatever our channel is. So she talks a little bit about doom scrolling. Like if we really get into our spiral, then we start to doom scroll and everything has an algorithm. So the more that we believe this, the more we tend to gravitate to the information. And that's the evidence we see around us,
mhm,
right? We see poverty, we see all this stuff. And then we wonder why somebody in a different position, they're not really seeing that. And they're like, oh my gosh, there's so many opportunities and all this. But she talks about that and she says, we get to choose our tea. She said we can either traumatize ourselves and believe that like there's all this stuff happening, or even better, like on social media, that everybody else can succeed, just not me. Right. So we get ourselves into this victim mode, we do all this stuff, poor me, poor me, poor me, or we traumatize ourselves. Or we can do the other T and we can teach ourselves. And of course, that's the healthier version where it's like, oh my gosh, look at what they did. I wonder how they did it. And this is where we put ourselves in different rooms. Who are we talking to? Who are we communicating with? Whose story are we listening to? Because I personally would rather be inspired and look at somebody who's having wild success or they are living this abundant, happy life and just say, how did you do that?
yeah.
There's a
And
formula and we just have to be willing. We don't always have to be the ones that create the path. There's a formula out there.
there is. And, my experience has been, you and I do networking events and meet a lot of different people. And I am inspired by so many people on the daily. And I've asked these individuals, like, hey, can I take you out for coffee? I'd love to like learn more about your journey. Man, these are not people that were silver spoon fed. You and I know many, many seven-figure individuals, and they built everything they have from the ground up. I mean, I forget the statistics, but it's like the average millionaire, I think it's like 80 or 90, like 85 or 90% of millionaires came from nothing. It's very rare these days. And there's a lot of millionaires now. It's very rare these days that people come from trust funds. That still exists, yes. But I say that to be inspirational. Find someone that inspires you, offer to take them to lunch or coffee. And man, the stories they tell, it's also, you see them at their point of success, not what they did to get there. And it's not overnight. I mean, it is rare that, anybody has overnight success. I think that is absolutely the exception. Like, that does not happen. Even influencers, right? You see all these people online making all this money from being influencers. They've been diligently doing content creation for years. Like, they didn't, maybe hit a viral video, but then, as we saw with some of the more recent viral individuals, like, they had mega success and then crashed and burned. It's like lottery winners. If you don't change the mindset, you win the lottery. They are so far off, like worse off after winning the lottery than they were, before, because they didn't have the mindset to receive that kind of success and abundance. So I'm really a big believer that, it's like steps in a process. We have to go through these different challenges to build up the identity of a person who can handle major levels of success. And that takes intentional work. There are no shortcuts here. That, you have to walk the path and be unrelenting in your vision. And that's hard. I struggled for years to figure out what I wanted to do. And I think it's still evolving, because we're all dynamic. We're all learning. We're all getting life experiences that help us help others in a different way. But it's not overnight. This doesn't happen overnight, nor does business success happen overnight. It is the small stuff behind the scenes that you don't see people grinding at doing that makes them successful, and that aligns them with the energy of success, is, showing the universe, like, hey, I really want to create this, and I'm going to take inspired action, and then I'm going to meditate, and then I'm going to take more inspired action, and then I'm going to have a coach that can help me get more clear, and then I'm going to take inspired action. So, I think the manifestation culture really is quite toxic in that it's just, well, vision board it, dream about it, imagine as if, okay, cool, but you have to take freaking action. Like, there's no amount of sitting on your butt that's going to build a dream business for you. Like, you have to be willing to do it.
redo all of this inside of you. And it's not even about becoming an entirely different person, but you might. But wouldn't you rather just aim to be the best version of what you were dealt with? And it's that empowered versus survival thing. Like, you can live in all the negative sides of your traits, which is victimhood and all this stuff. Like, it can run the show. You can turn off the program and you can just let it go. But you can become the best version of all of that. And that's what we're offering. That's what we offer people. If you don't want to do what we've done, you and I have picked up the books. We've gone to the events. We've just grit our teeth through the hardest moments, and we've had each other. Thankfully, we've exchanged some of our services. We've done that. But that's what we love. We love to see people know themselves, their real selves, and then use it and take the inspired action. That's what we're here for.
Yeah. Well, this is such a fun conversation, and I'm sure we'll have more, ongoing conversations about this, because it really is a journey, and there's just so much to address as a part of entrepreneurship. But as always, any questions or any topics you want us to dive deeper into, please drop us a note, at therevolutionofbeing.com, or send us an email. We're happy to provide feedback and also go deeper into specific areas if people feel compelled to that. So thank you for taking time out of your day. We appreciate that you chose to spend this with us, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks, guys.